Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel. In this video, we're going to look at NRL finally. It's back. Not the season, but NRL Fantasy is open. So a nice little early Christmas present for all of us playing along at home. So I guess this isn't usually the preferred format of the SuperCoach Nuff channel, but we do love NRL. We love fantasy sports. NRL Fantasy, it's on. So, for those who mightn't have played it before, might have joined the channel through watching other of the sports that we go through, NRL Fantasy is one of the two NRL formats, the other one obviously being Supercoach. I guess it is a bit different to Supercoach in that to start with, you only have a squad of 21 players instead of 25. And also the bench is fluid. So there's 8 bench spots instead of 12 in Supercoach, but you can have, all the same position if you want. Obviously, you do try to get a mix of positions for buys and injury cover, that sort of thing. But it does allow for a bit more flexibility, which is pretty cool in that sense. Um, I guess it is a little bit trickier in the sense that, you do only have 4 non-playing players every week. So I find you have to be a bit more discerning with players from the same club, that sort of thing, because you can't cover everyone on the bye if you've got too many from the one team. Um, and yeah, I guess as well, slightly different in that the prices change every week. So from round one, you can get into your trading. I think it's the same as last year in the sense that they'll hold back some of your trades too. So for those of you that like to go hard in your trades like I do, they'll actually, save you some heartache by giving you some trades or holding off some trades until the back third of the season. So particularly after, the origin period, it's great to actually have a few trades to be able to put your final team together. Um, so with that in mind, I thought, well, it's opened up. I've got as far as creating the team in the sense of in the system. I've set up a couple of leagues, and we'll sort of get the links down in the below this chat or below the video in the comments or description, whatever it's called. Been on YouTube for a year, still don't know what's going on, but just so excited about NRL. So let's get stuck in. So as you can see, the two most expensive players are Nico Hines and Nathan Cleary, both at $1 million. I don't know if you can start with both. So I'm going to lock in Nathan Cleary straight up. Just mostly because, I think he's locked in captain every week. The Penrith do have a relatively early buy. I don't know if we can see that on here. Full player profiles, that still working. Yep, now got a new tab, brilliant. Again, year on YouTube, don't know what's going on. So the fixtures. So yeah, round 6. That's not actually as early as I thought. So that's fine. We've got a few weeks to make some cash, and by then hopefully I think Nico will come along for the ride. But I guess part of the reason too why I'm not going to go with both is I think there's a bit of value in the halves this year. So I guess I've locked Nathan Cleary in, but generally what I like to do, and I guess I've already sort of done this, so I'll sort of skim through it, but do like to go through by position and by team at the start, just to sort of get a sense of where the squads are at. Because sometimes it can be hard looking at a list of 30 players across 17 teams, but if you can chunk it out into their position in each individual team, makes life a little bit easier. So the Broncos, you'd imagine Walters and Pakes will share the workload, so we're not interested in that. Reed Marnie should be the main man. The dog, sorry, got an itchy nose. Jake Turpin could play off the bench in that sort of utility role, but the Dogs are stacked with utilities. Either way, we don't really want to touch them. Reece Robson, probably play the big role. Granville will play a bit of sort of lock or, emergency hooker. So I don't know if we really want to go that way. Marshall King at 650 could be value, but we might try and chase a bit more. At the Dragons, Jacob Little looks like he's the guy now that buys out of the way. Um, they've got Cole Flanagan who could play that sort of utility role. So that's just one to monitor. At the Eels, so Lussick and Hands, I think it was pretty 50-50 last year, so usually don't want that. Jaden Brayley should be back from his injury, but Crossan was quite good, so there could be a bit of pressure on Brayley for that 80-minute sort of hooker role. I mean, it could just be a 60-20 split, in which case we don't really want either of them. At the Panthers, Mitch Kenny's a bit of a defensive workhorse, so don't be fooled by the low price. Um, Also with Sonny Luke, he only comes on and plays a little bit, so I wouldn't be too concerned about him. Damien Cook, pretty much 80-minute player. They do have Favilli, but he plays more of a lock role. Mamazulis just fills in for Cook when he's on origin duty. The Raiders, so, a few options there, but you can see from their average, it's all pretty evenly spread. I guess maybe Levi could be a cheap option if he gets the start, but, Starling and Wolford probably have age on their side. Um, so, that those prices we're not that interested. The Roosters, so Brandon Smith, you assume he's going to be the main man. Um, Yeah, so Moriarty might be a fill-in, but they've also got Sandon Smith who'll play a little bit of hooker off the bench, you'd think. So Connor Watson as well could fill in that role. So yeah, I don't think it's just a case of Brand Smith playing 80. It would be great if he did. Sea Eagles, so Croker's probably a bit overpriced for what he is. If Chan Kum Tong can get the start, we'd consider him, but I imagine he'll be a bench hooker at best, and that's not really what we want. The Sharks, so Blake Brayley pretty much plays 80 minutes, so unless he gets injured, then Beryl would be a big shot. They do also have McInnes that can play in there during the game, so it'll really just be if something unfortunate happened to Blake Brayley, then we could look at Beryl as a potential cheapy option. The Storm, so obviously Harry Grant is the man, and I'm going to lock him in. Other than Cleary, I think Grant's the one you have to have from the start of the season because he's just so much better than every other hooker out there. In terms of attacking upside, minutes that he plays, durability, the whole lot. So I'm happy to lock Harry Grant in. The Tigers, Happy Carousel is a good pick, but you'll notice Tigers do have the buy in round one. So we might be able to carry one Tiger, um, but probably not one at 600k and not a potential bench hooker in Simpkin or De Silva. At the Titans, so, Tanner Boyd's still listed as hooker. How their halves and all that shake out is probably the big question mark. Um, Randall's got hooker mid status this year, so I suggest he plays a bit more of the lock type role. Sam Verrills, there's going to be a rotation of some description, so I'm not that interested. And so then the Warriors, Wade Egan, he was a bit volatile. He can score a try, which is good for particularly Supercoach, but NRL Fantasy as well. Um, but I guess as well, Frankie Lussick sort of worked his way into the starting team a lot last year. Would play the first 20, and then Wade would play the last 60. So I guess the two true 80-minute hookers are Cook and Grant. Um, I think we might have to chase a bit of value somewhere just to have some cover. Obviously, Harry Grant will play as much as possible. If we have a look at his player profile. So the Storm do have a bye in week 4, so we don't have a lot of time to find cover. So it might be worthwhile starting with one. Um, and so I guess just going down the list, I guess in terms of value, given that a lot of these guys will be playing similar sort of minutes, and he does have that dual position as well. So I do like Brandon Smith as our cover. So I'll just leave him in the middle at the moment. We can always flip the team around as we go through, but we will have a look at the middles. So with the Broncos, you've got Haas and Carrigan locked in starters, and then with Flegler going to the Dolphins, there is a spot available. So it'll be interesting to see whether it's Baker or Kobe Hetherington. You think if they move Carrigan to 10, it would be Hetherington. But I feel like it will be Fletcher Baker. They've brought him across for a reason. So I'm going to put him in the side. Obviously, if it is Hetherington, I can flip and get the extra 25k. Great. But we'll start with Baker as that cheaper option at the Bulldogs. So I guess this is the team where there's not a lot going on in the middle. And so for that reason, I'm going to get Josh Curran in nice and early too. I think he'll play 13, but if not, he can definitely play, starting at number 10 next to Max King. Kurt Mann might get the job at 13. They do have Liam Knight, Ryan Sutton as well. So, I think maybe Liam Knight would be the risk of, Curran not getting the job at number 10, but then I'd imagine Curran would go to 13. But, I think Serraldo does want a ball playing 13. Worst case scenario, I guess we could go with Liam Knight. But I think Curran just offers more in terms of, um, he's a workhorse. When he is out there, he does score points. So it's what the Bulldogs need. I was pretty stoked about him getting a spot on the roster. I would have loved for Noah Blake to come across, but didn't quite work out. And for those new to the channel, I'm a tragic Bulldogs fan, so I get used to a lot of that. Cowboys, Ruben Cutter's nice. They've got a lot of options here with, McLean, Tamalolo, Neems being good. Even Tanoa Brown gets a start from time to time. So probably not going to go near any of them. So Tommy Gilbert, was out with that injury, so it could be a nice sort of keeper option at that price. They've got Tommy Flegler in there now as well, so that's just going to sort of add to the middle rotation. You'd imagine like Kenny Bromwich will go back out on the edge. That's an issue. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's a lot of value there. So I'm just looking at the value picks first, and then you can upgrade to keepers with whatever money's left. The Dragons, so nothing too inspiring there. Couchman was okay last year, so he might increase his output going forward, but we'll get past. Hopgood's an interesting one. Obviously, is priced well for a reason. I think if we can afford him, it would be nice to start with him. I think the Eels do have that good run with buys again this year. I haven't, looked too deep into all that. This is honestly just initial gut reaction. Game's open. Let's build a team, have a chat. But I definitely haven't done any of the deep research yet. That'll all come in the new year, probably. Hopefully. Madison tends to start on the bench, so Paulo and RCG starting with Hopgood. So again, not a great deal of value. Greg was good. So I guess if there is injuries to Paulo, Campbell Gillard again, there is a bit of value there at the Eels, but again, we're just going off what we think it's going to look like at the start of the year. The Knights, so I guess they're probably their starting sort of rotation there. Yeah, no real value. Maybe Saifidi value. Jacob, that is, at 437, but don't know. Don't think so. At the Panthers, so Spencer Leniu out, doesn't really change it much. He was more of an impact type player. Um, so you'd imagine maybe Eisenhuth just slots in that role. It's like Fisher Harris, Leo to start. Sorensen probably plays on that edge. He's quite good at that, or he can be, first one off the bench. So then Smith and probably Eisenhuth off the bench too. So that's fine. We don't want any of those particularly. Cam Murray's always a nice keeper option, but quite expensive, obviously. Jai Arrow's always interesting, but you never really know where he's playing. Uh, Totola, Tommy Burgess, they're fairly priced, so no real value. So Mawali's the cheapest, but doesn't get the minutes. The Raiders, there might be a spot there. Horsburgh, Tarpany, Papali are the starters. They do also have Smithies coming over. He's listed as an edge player for NRL fantasy purposes, so that'll be interesting to see if he plays 13. Then he'll obviously be a dual candidate, um, potentially as early as preseason, but if not, as the season starts. But he could also play on the edge, so you never know. At the Roosters, so you'd imagine Butcher plays on an edge, Radley at 13, Lindsay Collins at the start. Warrior Hargraves won't start the season, so there might actually be a sneaky opportunity for Leniu. We talked about he was an impact player at Penrith, but you'd imagine part of him leaving, other than salary cap purposes, is to try and get a starting spot. It's pretty hard behind Fisher Harris and Leota, to be fair. So, it could be a little option there to get Leniu some more minutes. Again, got to get through all preseason and all that chat. But, between him and Brandon Smith, we've got a bit of rotation here at the front. Obviously, whenever the Roosters have a bye, which let's have a look, fixtures. So, not for a long while, round 14. So, Roosters could be a good team to target at the start, which is a very nice. So, good to know too. But I think the one bit of value that might be there is Lenu, perhaps. Seagulls, Jakey T's a hard worker, but nothing too exciting there. Yeah, don't want that Lodge. Oh, excuse me. Cam McInnes, we know what he does. Lots of hard work, but no real value there, I would have thought. The Sharks, the Storm. Um, yeah, so again, the way they use their middle rotation, there's nothing really piques a lot of interest there. The Tigers, so they're on the bye, but to me, they'll probably be Clemmer, Big Stefano, and Pole would start. 12 coming off the bench. Maybe if Fainu gets a run, he could be a good, cheap, dual position type option. But I'd imagine he'd start off the bench at best. The Titans, so Big Tino, he's one we always try to target by the end of the year, make sure we've got him in the middle rotation because he's a weapon. But obviously not a lot of value there. So Fodawaker, Palacia might be an interesting one coming across from the Bronx. But again, their front three is pretty solid. Well, I'm saying that, I'm trying to think who was normally their 13 last year. Was it Clark or Liu? I feel like it was someone else. Its name's not there, but I just can't think of it. Like I said, a lot of water to go on the bridge in pre-season, so no point overthinking. So Fanua Blake will line up for the Warriors this year. Looks like he's going to Cronulla in 25, so that'll be a nice pickup for them. But yeah, between him, Tohu, Jazz Tavanga, Mitch Barnett, that they're not going to really have a lot of minutes outside of there. So again, not much value in that position. So I think that covers the middles. Let's have a look at the edges. So for the Bronx, there is a bit of a gap with Kurt Cable going to the Warriors. So I'm going to imagine Piakora would get the start in the second row. So that price will have that. if it's Willison, that'd be even better. But I think Piakura does have the edge at the Dogs. So I think, the sort of value pick across the whole edge position is Viliami Kikau. Obviously, missing a lot of time with injury, sort of trying to fit his way into the system, with the full preseason and, the upside that he does have, the attacking weapons that they've brought into the Dogs, hopefully that results in, some good upside from him. So definitely keen on him. Jacob Preston is a nice pick, but just he went so well last year that he's priced fairly. The Cowboys, so you'd imagine Leilua, Nanai would be the starters. Lukey off the bench, perhaps. Hess probably off the bench as well. So I know I started Nanai last year in SuperCoach as a bit of a point of difference, but he's just too inconsistent. So not really looking at that in NRL Fantasy. So Kenny Bromwich, you'd imagine, will be on an edge. Lemuelu probably did enough to lock in the other edge. Not sure what's going on with the average there. Um, but yeah, no real value there. Felice, oh, I forgot about Felice Kafusi. Don't know. Either way, not a lot of value. At the Dolphins on the edge. So the Dragons, probably imagine Dan Russell and Jack Bird, or Jaden Sewer and Dan Russell. Jack Bird could play 13. But it's between those three, so not a lot of value with the cheaper options. Itchy nose, it's not going well. Yeah, Murdoch Masilla, absolute trap last year. Don't go it. The Eels, so you'd imagine it'll be Cartwright and Sean Lane on the edges. Again, Hopgood plays 13. Madison comes off the bench first sort of rotation. Um, yeah, unless there's injuries, we're not going to worry about Tuolungi, Matt Dury, those sort of guys. At the Knights, so Tyson Frizzell absolutely on one edge. With Lachlan Fitzgibbon gone, could be Dylan Lucas's position to lock down. Pretty sure it's Dylan. Yeah. But at 550, we've already sort of got that mid-price option there. If it was Brody Jones at 296, you could lock that in for sure. But I think Lucas did enough at the back end of last year to sort of lock that in for himself. And Pierce Paul, is he one of the guys from the UK? Don't know much about him. He's injured anyway, so who cares? uh, so on the edge, I'd have Sorensen and Martin, but they could go with one of Hosking or Garner. I don't think they're going to go too deep into the list there at Penrith, so nothing to consider there. Probably Colomatungi and Arrow on the edge for the Rabbitohs. So again, not a lot of value there. The Raiders, Hudson Young, one edge. Could be Smithies. And if you like him at that price, you could possibly substitute him with Kikau. Or we might be able to squeeze him on the bench. Let's try it. Give him a run, see how he goes. It would just depend on where he starts. At the Roosters, probably, Butcher one edge. You'd imagine Crichton, but, all the other options there. If Wong or Tupanua locked it down, then, it'd be great to see, like, Siwa Wong lock it down. I'd seriously consider, but just too many questions around the role. So at the Seagulls, Olaquatu and Schuster. So the question is, now that Schuster is locked in on that edge, is he worth a gamble at 400k? I'm leaning towards yes. I don't really want him in the halves, but we'll fix that up later. Um, I just think it's his position. If it was someone like Ben Travojevic, that would be sick. Um, but again, we can always swap them over. Obviously, not swap him into the halves, but yeah, I think Ben Travojevic, if he does get the start, he looks good, but he's so versatile that he's the perfect bench player. So it's sort of his downfall, I suppose. The Sharks, Nikora Teague Wilton, that's all you need to know. Billy Burns at 600k, that's not great value at all. So, I mean, yeah, Nikora, he's probably one that if you're looking for a gun edge, lock him in. But we'll see how we're going for price. I think we're going to get pretty thin anyway. We're already halfway there. Spent too much on Grant and Cleary. On the Storm, so Eli Katoa, Trent Liero, no value in that this year. If Jack Halves got the start, you'd be all over that at 300k. But again, you imagine Liero and Katoa would get the sort of nod. Although I'd have Katoa and Howarth just on potential. The Tigers, Bateman, Papali, pretty locked in. Not a lot of value. Sean Blaw, come off the bench and play a bit in the middle. So I think everyone's fairly priced there. We won't go near that. Fafita, obviously, absolute gun. Him and Nikora are probably the two targets in the edge position. Hopgood can play in the middle. Um, but yeah, we can't afford them early doors. And Fermor should be back, so no value in Cleese, Haas, or Joey Stimson. And the Warriors, so Jackson Ford and Kurt Capewell, you'd imagine. Nia Corey will have something to say about that, but he can play in the middle too. So, I think they're all fairly priced, and there's, Sifakula probably gets an occasional bench spot if there's injuries, but probably not a lot of value there. So into the halves, and there's a bit of movement in the halves. So not at Brisbane, obviously. It's going to be Reynolds and Mam. Pretty simple. Mam at 450 is tempting, but probably doesn't have the solid base that you want in fantasy. The Dogs, my boy Matt Burton. Surely he plays 6. Sexton plays 7. If Hutchinson got the shout at 7, I'd look at bringing him into the side. Um, just a solid player, but again, another sort of bench utility. He's probably just too versatile for his own good. And hopefully Olawapu makes a speedy recovery from his neck surgery. The Cowboys did in Townsend, pretty simple. Duffy might get a run if there's injury, in which case we could bring him in as a cheapie, but yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So Sean O'Sullivan should be back in the 7. Plus, way overpriced at 42.5 average. So you'd imagine they stick with Katoa, but could easily be Nikorima as well in 6 for the Dolphins. The Dragons, so Ben Hunt obviously is starting at 7. And I talked about Kyle Flanagan before, maybe playing a bit of hooker, but given, they've sold Sullivan, Amone is out with whatever. You'd imagine he'd be the front runner for the 6 jersey. So if he is starting, we'll run with him on the bench. That's not a problem. If he's playing that 14 role though, we'll flick him. That's not an issue. Moses and Brown, pretty straightforward there for the Eels. No value. Cogger, could sort of fit in. I don't know how far or how long Hastings is out for. I think that's part of the reason why they brought Cogger in was because of that injury. But don't really want any of them. So I guess the interesting one is at the Panthers. So if Luai is out, you'd imagine Schneider would be the man that would fill the 6 role. But there is another option which we'll probably talk about in the wing fullback spot. Cody Walker and Lachlan Elias, the halves of the Rabbitohs, why not play in the centres? So I don't think we want to go near him until he does get that centre position. And then even then, probably better options. Fogarty, and there's not a lot of options for the 6 jersey. So I think KO Weeks will get a nod, and in that case, he could well find a spot in our wing fullback, or obviously good bench cover there. So I'm not sure if he's got the lead role in the 6. He could even play fullback because they've got a heap of options at fullback at the Raiders. So Yeah, we'll lock him in for now just as that nice cheap option. Walker and Cleary, obviously. Sandon Smith, you'd imagine, is getting a bench spot. Dockett Clay getting a run at the Roosters. That's interesting that he's bottom price. Obviously, his games of the Dogs don't count. Terry Evans and Luke Brooks, the halves pairing this year. Um, so, yeah, Luke Brooks probably doesn't offer value if he's not running the show. Um, Obviously, if DCE goes down, him or Arthur, whoever they put in the seven, that elevates them quite quickly. Sharks, Nico Hines, and I think Braden Trimble will be locked in at the six. And at that price, I think he's worth a bit of a look. So we'll bring him into the squad. The Storm, Munster and Hughes, pretty obvious. Peasants just origin cover. So the Tigers, so Adam Dewey won't play for a while. So you'd imagine the halves will be Caesar and Sullivan. Um, and I guess given what we've seen in the past, I think, you know, Caesar at 477, he kicks goals, and he'll run the general play. So a lot of, kicking yards and that sort of thing that score well in NRL Fantasy. So I'm willing to sort of have him as the one Tigers player that I carry through round one. No, skip the Titans. Again, this is another one where it's quite messy. You know, does Kieran Foran keep going? Does Brinson move in the half so they can play Jaden Campbell as well? Weaver looked pretty good at the back end of the season. Um, so does he or Boyd get the seven? It's too messy. And the Warriors. So SJ, lock him in. The six is an interesting one. Metcalf went well last year, but you do have Harris Tavita coming back. So if Harris Tavita starts, he'll get a spot in the 21 somewhere. You can see I have loaded up on halves, but I just think that's where there's a bit of value with all the movement. I just realised with the Tigers that Jerome Luai plays six outside of Caesar, so completely whiffed on that one. But yeah, I think with that, Caesar will be that controlling sort of voice, and Luai can go off and do his thing. All right, so that's the halves in the centres. So Stags and Dane Mariner, I think, will get the spot for Herbie Farnworth. So at 450, I think there's a slightly better value, but he is definitely one to keep in mind, particularly with that dual position. At the Dogs, so Stephen Crichton getting one spot, and you'd assume Bronson Sherry gets the other. Um, yeah, I don't think they'll move Burton into the centres or anything crazy like that. So, I think, well, Mariners at the same price, so I could have gone either way. I think just a bit of loyalty to the boys. and, actually, I probably should bring in the dual position option. Head over heart, there we go. So Mariner, but you could have Sherry in there too. Holmes and Laybud, it would seem. So I think Hiku's done. Um, so yeah, I think that's fine. Laybud doesn't really have a lot of value. Uh, the Dolphins, so you think Tabuai Fado would play fullback. Um, Farnworth will obviously play in the centres. They've got Aiken. I think the interesting one could be if he does get a run, Jake Averillo. It's sort of hard to see where he fits, but he's a great fullback. He's a great centre. He could play 5'8", you know. So, you know, I think he's too good to sit on the bench, you know. I was shocked when the Dogs got rid of him, but I think they've just overcooked it with too many backline players, and someone had to go. But yeah, I think he'll find a spot somewhere in the starting lineup, and at 447, it's too good to pass up. The Dragons, so Lomax and Sully, they're fairly priced, so we don't worry about them. At the Eels, probably, Penasini and I guess Simonson, however you say his name, would be the front runners there in the centre spots. but again, no real value there. The Knights, Gagai and Best, that's pretty straightforward. So don't need to worry about that. The Panthers, so Isaac Tungo obviously on one centre, and they've got two, I guess, a couple of options here. Peachy is the experienced player. Alamotti they've brought in, and so you'd imagine they've brought him in for a reason. Um, they also have Jesse McLean, so I will put Alamotti in, and if it's McLean, we'll trade. If it's Peachy, we'll just go elsewhere instead of this team. Um, just notice we are running out of bench spots, but that's fine. We can always fix that. Graham and Tass front runner. Oh, sorry, Graham and it'll be um, Whiten in the centres. So Tass might sort of be on the outer, but no real value there. No, skip the Raiders. So you'd imagine it'd be Timoko and Chris would play in the centres, but if Chris plays fullback, although he is suspended first up, so that sort of just strengthens the case for getting KO Weeks in. But whoever it is, it could be strange. It'll be a short term thing. I think Timoko and Chris will be the centres going forward. Kottridge will probably play on a wing, um, and then they've got other options for their fullback and other wing anyway. The Roosters, so Joey Manu obviously. Um, Swally could move into the centres, but they've also got Billy Smith. So whichever way you slice it, not a lot of value there. The Sea Eagles, again, I've got a few to choose from with Cooler, Garrick, Parker. I guess if Parker got the start, or even again Ben Travojevic gets a spot in the starting 13, there's a bit of value there. But I imagine Garrick and Cooler the front runners for those two centre spots. The Sharks, so Ramian and Talakai, pretty obvious. If one of the cheapies gets a run, they're obviously straight in. The Storm, so Seve, Olam. Olam is fairly lowly priced, considering he's probably the locked in option in the centres. So who do we give up on? Guess we can always move Mariner to wing fullback, so we'll get Olam in there. But then we are running out of slots, but that's okay. We can always change it up as we want to. Centres, so probably Toa and Kapoa, but that's about right, I think, in terms of price. Kelly and Sammy, you'd imagine, would be the centres for the Titans, so that's fine. Warriors, again, not a lot of value there. Maybe Rocco Berry, if he can lock down that spot. I imagine it would be him and Poppy in the centres. So maybe Berry. If Alamotti fell through or Averillo, Rocco Berry would be fine. That's an option there. So I guess the last position is the wing fullback. So looks, you imagine that'd be the back three: Pereira, Walsh, Cobbo. So I will bring Mariner in. How much money we got left? Still got a mil, so we're doing all right. At the Dogs, so if the rumours are sort of correct, Connor Tracy playing fullback, I think that's still decent value. Obviously, Kiraz and Adokar are the favourites for the wing spots. Kiraz could play in the centres too, which is obviously, we had Cherry in there. We flicked him pretty quick, but not a lot of value. Obviously, the dream pick is Blake Taff playing fullback at 330k. We know what he's capable of. But the talk is that Tracy is going to be the man. You'd imagine Taff is again another utility type option, a bit too versatile for his own good. So we probably, I don't know if we can lock Connor Tracy in, but definitely one to keep an eye on. The Cowboys, Drinkwater, probably Valame and Taulagi. Kyle Felton, okay backup, but no value. At the Dolphins, as we said, it's probably going to be Tabuai Fadal at the back, or again, could be Avarillo. Isako definitely on one wing. The other wing, not so sure. You think Valtafari is more of a centre. Um, could be Tessie New, Jack Bostock. I mean, depends who got named, but I think there's better options. At the Dragons, Ravalawa, Sloan, and hopefully Cody Ramsey gets back up. But if not, there could be an option in Corey Allen, probably not, but Fiernay, you know, at 309 starting winger. That's sort of the price point we'd be looking at. So I'll just put him in. There probably is better options. Uh, Gutho, Sivo, and probably Sean Russell, or Simonson. Obviously, they're fairly interchangeable. So the back five, I think, set for the Eels, and maybe Sean Russell if we need the money, but with 700k, I don't know if that is the case. The Knights, so Ponga, Mazu, probably Twala. So I think their back five is set at the Knights. You know, Tom Jenkins coming over from the Panthers will put some heat on for a wing spot, but already has a bit of price built in. So yeah, I guess probably what makes me think not Paul Alamotti is looking at this. You'd imagine that Taruva could probably slot into the centres, so he'll fit in with Uh, what's his name? Taylor May. I couldn't think. There's too many Mays that start with T going around the league. Brian Tyler, obviously, great guy if you can get him in. Dylan Edwards, great pick too. But I guess the one I was sort of talking about with Jerome Luai leaving, Dane Laurie could slot in at 6. So we'll bring him in as an option. And I've run out of players, but that's all right. We might flick Fiernay. We got 550. See how we go. So Latrell obviously at fullback, Johnson and probably Milne on the wing. If it was Thompson, would be nice. If it was Munro, would be even nicer. But I think it's a three-way go for that spot. We're all, I guess, all fantasy and SuperCoach fans are cheering on Munro, but we don't pick the teams; the coaches do. So with the Raiders, so Rapana, as good as he is at fullback, you'd think they need him on a wing. They got Hopewadi, um, Chris. So if Chris plays fullback, it'd probably be Hopewadi. Oh, sorry, Rapana, and maybe Cottridge. So I think they need Chris in the centres. I'd have Cottridge on a wing. I'd have Hopewadi or Rapana on the wing. So it sort of lines up that Xavier Savage would play fullback, but I don't know. I mean, we could probably put him in. He's a cheaper option. See how he goes. The Roosters, so Tedesco, Dom Young on one wing, Daniel Tupou on the other. So that makes sense. No value there. At Seagulls, so you've got Travojevic, obviously at fullback. 650 is probably a bit expensive to start. Saab on one wing, and then the other wing, it could be any of these guys, but I guess they're fairly priced in that, the Seagulls don't really have that running um, winger. I guess it was Ruben Garrick, but I think they're pretty keen on slotting him in at the centres, so we'll see. I think the back three is pretty obvious there at the Sharks. Ronaldo, Will Kennedy, Sione Katoa. So, if Dykes could find his way into fullback, would be nice. Can't foresee it really happening. At the Storm, so I think the player we have to bring in, who do we flick out? Maybe Alamotti now I've talked about that out loud. But Ryan Pappenhausen, at 495k, if he starts the season, I think he's going to be in most teams. Just so much value. You'd imagine Meany and Warbrick could be on the wings. Olam in the centres with someone else. Um, so yeah, I think have to bring Paps in if he's starting the season. Dream Buller, Nofaluma, Junior Tupo, or Charlie Staines even. Again, probably all fairly priced. Um, the Titans, so hopefully Jaden Campbell can find a spot at fullback. It's all down to Brimson and where and the halves picture and how that all pans out. But you'd imagine Fafita and Khan Pereira on the wings. So uh, yeah, I don't think there's any real value there. And at the Warriors, so RTS back will be interesting. The talk is he'll play centre, so at 619 that's probably too expensive to get into. CNK, he was good at fullback last year, so you assume he'd take that spot at back. DWZ on the wing's good. Um, Montoya probably play on the other wing. Yeah, but again, not a lot of cheap value there. So, I mean, just from picking players that we think will start, we've still got about 100k to spend. So, if we flick this team around so it looks a bit more like how we'd line up. So, I think, Avarillo is that sort of wild card option. Savage on the bench. Schuster's definitely not starting. Trindle for sure. Smithies probably start over Pirikura. Kara now. I think, that's probably how it would look. The bench, well, doesn't really matter at this point. I mean, if Schuster's playing on the edge, it'd probably be like that. Caesar can just slide down the bottom because he's on the bye. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we've got 100k to spend. So I mean, it just depends what you're looking for, I suppose. Um, yeah, we don't have to play around with that just now. But let's save it. It is saved. Brilliant. So obviously, if this was our starting team, which it definitely won't be, but Captain Cleary, VC Grant, um, yeah, just at the moment, it's all about value. Because as we said, prices update every week. So after week one, they'll in theory all start going up in price, and then we can start making moves from there. But obviously, we've got all the preseason to go. A lot of research to do around things like buy planning, all that sort of advanced maneuvers. And you better believe there'll be videos all about that. But just wanted to get one out there. Just initial thoughts. Probably a bit too long now that I've gone through it all. But again, just excited that NRL Fantasy is back and we can start talking about it. Not that I hate the other sports, but I guess NRL Fantasy or SuperCoach, I suppose, is where it all kicked off. But rugby league and the fantasy side of things is probably the whole point of why this channel started. So, like I said, I have gone on long enough. So, if you've got any initial thoughts or obvious players that I've overlooked, or again, like I said, I haven't really put any research into it, so don't hold me to this level of information. It will be a little bit higher. I'm not going to say I'm definitely the best at all the analysis and stuff. Just a man throwing out his thoughts. But if you've got those thoughts as well, feel free to add them below the video. If you do enjoy the NRL content, remember give the video a like, subscribe for all the fantasy content. Um, quick shout out for the leagues. I forgot to do that. I'm bad with this stuff, but have created a couple of leagues. We'll do a head-to-head league. I should be able to get 16 teams. I feel like, given the subscribers to the channel. If not, we can adjust it. There's heaps of time. I'm sure we'll get there. But there is also just the open one. So if you want to sort of compare yourself head to head, that's generally how I play fantasy. Is the overall. I think this will be the first time in quite a few years I've even signed up for a head to head league. Um, so we'll see, how that goes. But yeah, definitely look at this as more of like the overall. So yeah, if you want to join in the open league, that can have as many people as we can get. So the more the merrier. both of those will be down in the comments section or the description. Again, you're on YouTube, don't know what's going on. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. So, I've said all the things that need to be said. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.